Hi, this is Derek Jordan. Welcome to the World Fusion Show, where we bring you the leading innovators in world fusion music. Today, my guest is Yousuf Kerai, joining us from Karachi, Pakistan. Yusuf is a tabla player, composer, and teacher, and just a wonderful musician. Welcome, Yousuf Kerai, to the World Fusion Show.
Thank you, Derek, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, even though we're in different time zones.
I wanted to just sort of go back and just have you share with us your musical beginnings and your musical background, just for starters.
Sure thing. It all started at the age of 8 for me. Of course, music starts really from the womb, but it started at the age of 8 when I started to learn the harmonium and vocals with Ustad Babu Khan. And that's thanks to my parents for introducing me to South Asian music, which, at that time was not necessarily in vogue or wasn't really something that would be the musical genre of choice for people in kind of the society I was living in. But that sort of paved the way for me to really become fascinated with the world of tabla and rhythm and South Asian rhythm. And then at the age of 16, I was accepted as a student of the great maestro of Pakistan, Ustad Khurshid Hussain. Since then, I haven't looked back. And with only about two and a half years of training with him, I had set off to Bennington College, where I had the great fortune of meeting musicians like yourself. And I think the first time we performed was in Brattleboro.
Was it? Okay, yeah. Now, you also told me that you inherited your grandfather's tablas. They were, there as you were growing up. He was deceased, but they were something that were in front of you and you could work with.
Absolutely. In fact, I think that's the greatest inheritance that I could have had from my grandfather, whom I never met. He passed away before I was born. But he was the real kind of the musical influence in the family. And therefore, thankfully, he passed it on to my parents. And yes, leaving us those two instruments, his harmonium and the tabla set, really had a lasting impact, as you can see.
Oh yes, I could say. Definitely it made an imprint. So you had some interesting early influences in your music. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. I think what was fantastic was that along with my grandfather's instrument collection, there was also a collection of LPs which he used to gather when he used to visit India back in the day. And so I grew up listening to great masters and the great stalwarts of South Asian music, including the great tabla master, who was, kind of this, at that time, he was like the big voice of fusion as well with tabla, Ustad Zakir Hussain. And so he was my first inspiration for tabla, especially. And then, of course, when I met my guru, I started to listen to many other greats that I had never known of. And so slowly my kind of circle of music became, deeply drenched in South Asian music. And then my undergraduate education in the US actually opened a lot of interesting doors and spaces for collaboration.
Yeah.
One of my first jobs at the college was a dance accompanist.
Nice.
So it was with modern dance and then with jazz piano, because there was a Tom Farrell over there who used to accompany dance classes as well. And so just meeting musicians, and of course Jared Shapiro,
our good friend,
the cellist, a good friend, and through him I met with the whole larger community of musicians.
Yeah.
So that really kind of shaped my understanding of music as well, along with courses in music and Western music.
So I would love to go to our first video. In this clip, you are playing with your group, Tarz, And I want to say a little bit about this clip we're going to see.
Absolutely. This clip was basically in the early years of Tarz Group in 2014. This was the first time that the group, which was mainly South Asian musicians, we were kind of collaborating with musicians that were trained in other genres, especially in Western genres. And so this was an experiment which we called No Confusion. Where we wanted to make sure that this was really kind of, we were trying to create a conversation between the two genres. And so there's a little bit of a kind of an exchange with the drummer.
That's right.
Is a conversation with the drummer. And then there's also an excerpt where we are experimenting with reggae.
I heard that. It's great. It's cool. Let's go to the clip right now. All right, we are back with Yousuf Kerai, all the way from Karachi, Pakistan. So great. Now, that was pretty cool. Digging that Pakistani reggae, man. That's excellent. Very hip. Not something you hear every day, for sure.
Definitely not.
That's cool. Now, when you were at Bennington, you did a lot of things, but you studied with Milford Graves, who is my mentor and was just the most important musical person in my life when I was a student there and afterwards. Tell me about your work with Milford.
Well, since you were a student of Milford Graves and I was a student of Milford Graves, in my part of the world, we are called Guru Bhai, which means that we are brothers because we have the same guru.
That's nice.
So the work with Milford Graves was incredible. I think the timing was perfect, and I think it's all about timing, really, when you have an influence in your life. So Professor Graves was intimately aware of my background and my training, and so he knew that I came from a musical culture where linguistics and musical linguistics were almost, kind of synonymous with music. And so the language of rhythm was already something that was part of the training. And so the ideas that he kind of brought in with different kind of hand drums were really priceless, because he was trying to at the same time introduce us to many world rhythmic traditions, but and simultaneously kind of how do we make them evolve as well. And so really kind of working on that activity of thought, staying within the music and within the work, within the rhythmic work.
Now, let's talk a little bit about South Asian music and fusion, because this is what we do on the show. We talk about different ways we blend different kinds of music. Now, most people will be familiar. Their first introduction in America to Indian music may have been through Ravi Shankar and the Beatles, and George Harrison's study with him, and his use of the sitar on Norwegian wood, and then more work as it went along. But there also was another group in the 70s called Shakti, which was led by John McLaughlin, great guitarist, that brought in some wonderful Indian musicians as well. So you're part of that world fusion, genealogy with what you're doing with Tarz. So tell us a little bit about Tarz and what your vision is for that group and your concept of world fusion.
Absolutely. I think it's very important to understand that even in the example you gave with Pandit Ravi Shankar and George Harrison, and there was, I think, any culture that has come into contact with South Asian musical culture has had to brace themselves with this idea of a very complex kind of phenomenon. And this complex phenomenon, especially because it holds so many influences within its development. It has Arabic influences, Persian influences, Turkish influences. It's got Mongol influences, and all of those musical devices have been built into the framework of South Asian music. So it's very first, it's important to understand that South Asian music itself is the result of a lot of fusion over the years.
It's very important to know.
Right. And so, and then it becomes very difficult to think about, okay, well, now how will this music that's already kind of the product of so much intense fusion going to now go and start to, explore territories, new musical territories with other genres?
Yes.
And of course, in the global culture that we're seeing now, that there's a lot of influence of Western pop and Western popular cultural music within the kind of mainstream frameworks. And so in Pakistan, we were faced with a very kind of depleted South Asian musical understanding amongst the masses because of a lack of musical education in general. And then with this kind of newfound diet of Western pop, it became very important for me to establish some kind of presence with South Asian music without lyrics, because lyrics often provide too much context and dictate the context.
Right.
So it had to be instrumental in nature, so that our youth could engage and inherit the incredible musical heritage of South Asia.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to reformulate the way it was going to be presented, and not in the traditional ways that it was presented, but in ways where we changed the format. For example, harmony is not a part of South Asian music. It never developed vertically in kind of simultaneous stacking. It developed more in kind of a linear melodic way. And so how do we kind of combine those two? What's that perfect kind of balance that we can achieve?
Yeah.
And I think Thurs was the experiment that I tried to create in Karachi.
It's very cool. So let's go to our second video. This is an acoustic setting. Do you want to say something quickly about that?
Yes, absolutely. This was an experiment that I had done without my ensemble necessarily, so it was kind of a solo act with another leading guitarist of Pakistan, who's also part of a very popular band called Fusion. Actually, that's the band's name. But they write it with a Z, so it's like Fuson if you read it incorrectly. And his name is Shalim Xavier. And he's, as you can see, trained in lead guitar that draws from many influences. And in fact, I think in the clip that we're going to see right now, there's a little bit of that Carlos Santana feel as well
Yeah.
in his playing. And what I've tried to show is, I mean, and so it was a kind of decisive act that we're not going to have a drummer, but instead see how the tabla is going to interpret the groove, the rhythm, the manner of playing with this improvised acoustic guitaring.
Yeah. Oh, great. Let's go to the video right now. We are back with Yousuf Kerai from Karachi, Pakistan. Now, I'm getting a real flamenco kind of vibe from that also, which is very cool. Nice combination there.
In fact, I'd like to add that even that influence in my life was happened in Bennington.
Oh, yeah.
And that's thanks to Jared.
That's
because,
right.
Jared had a very big flamenco. In fact, we worked together for the soundtrack of a play, Bernarda Alba, at Bennington, and so we were co-composing the music for that. And I learned a lot of incredible rhythmic clapping work.
Yes.
That's within flamenco music, and of course the undeniable kind of Arab influence on that musical genre as well.
That's
so
right.
It's amazing, how these genres are really born from, like we said earlier.
So I want to go to our third video, and can you just tell us what we're going to see?
So this video has been kind of almost the fruits of the labor of Tarz Group, the ensemble that I started, and finally we got invited by the Fez Foundation Trust to the Fez International Festival held in Lahore every year. And this is one of the largest festivals that take place in Pakistan, where artists, writers, poets all come together and display their art. And this festival is basically carrying forward the legacy of the famous revolutionary poet Faiz Ahmad Faiz of Pakistan, who was also a nominee for the Nobel Prize in Literature and won the Lenin Peace Prize. So a great Pakistani poet, a great legacy, and it's his children that organize this festival every year in Pakistan. And in this one, Tarz Group got invited to with our full ensemble. So you can see that we have a string section. We'll have the two sitar maestros, Ustad Sajid Hussain and Shehroz Hussain of Pakistan, of the Senia Gharana. We have a keyboardist who's really kind of trying to work with the South Asian genre, but with the confines of what the keyboard offers. We have a lead guitarist and a flute player. And a dholak player in the rhythm section as well. So it was, I think, overall, it's this collaboration where you don't usually see South Asian music in this ensemble format. And then it's got a bit of that, it's got a little bit of that Bollywoodness as well, because the string section plays its pieces like the film industry kind of did.
Right.
It's got It's got the rhythmic interludes and the improvisation that are, of course, unique to South Asian music. And then it also has, these kind of piano or keyboard solo, kind of in the jazz fashion, but yet staying within the rag structure,
Right.
which is a very big thing in our music. So that's really where, and that's what I call fusion, especially world fusion, where it's not just about putting two musicians together and finding one common ground, but it's also a musician trying to find a space within a musical form.
Yeah.
And really, really kind of fusing the two elements.
Yeah.
So this was in 2016, and let's have a look.
Well, it's wonderful. Let's check the video out now. Thanks. All right, we are back. That's just great and really shows just a diversity of instruments and sounds that you're bringing together with your group. Really fantastic stuff.
Thank you.
Yes, and yeah, go on.
Oh no, I was just going to say that the young keyboardist. So his training is both in kind of chord structures as well as kind of harmonium. So he understands rag structure as well, but he also understands kind of chords and how to work with those. And so really, and a lot of musicians in Pakistan are now getting this kind of dual training because they see that, I mean, the world of harmony and of the atmosphere that's created by Western music is something that's unmistakably a part of world fusion and needs to be there. And so now it's being incorporated in a lot of other traditional work as well.
So, Yousuf Kerai, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today on the show. It's been just great having you and having you give us an introduction to South Asian music. I'm sure our audience will be really greatly appreciate your expertise in this.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here, and of course, we could go on talking for another couple of hours.
I'm sure
to music.
That would be easy. And now we're going to get to go to the part of the show that a lot of our audience likes the best, even where we get to play together, through the magic of the internet. So I'm looking forward to doing that as well. So thank you so much again for joining us.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. Hey, this is Derek Jordan. Thanks so much for being with us today on the World Fusion Show. It's been great to have you. And I just want to say thank you to our sponsors, the Mackenzie Family Charitable Trust, Dean's Beans, Chris Pratt, Nancy Feinberg, and Ron Dans for their generous support. And, please follow us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, and help us spread world fusion music far and wide. And remember, as we always say, think globally, listen locally, and support independent music.